Howdy everybody, this is Omar, your Audio Amigo, here today with a normal Audio Amigo review. Today we're looking at a new beauty from CVJ. This is the Yukimi. It is a premium single dynamic driver IEM produced by CVJ in collaboration with Angelears Audio Store. It was released in September of this year at a price of $210. That puts it up there with what I consider to be the other premium single DD options, the Tenshinchim Origin, the Moondrop Kato, the Simgot EA500LM format. My only experience with Angelears has been with their Timeless AE, which to my ears was a good improvement over the original Timeless. I've also heard really positive things about the Delchi AE, so all that said, I have pretty high expectations for this set. Quick disclaimer. The Yukimi was sent to me by Angelears. I am not being paid for this review, but because I could turn around and sell this if I wanted for money, I have activated the paid promotion feature here on YouTube. I do these disclaimers because I believe in full transparency, especially when there's potential bias besides my own personal tastes at play. Thank you very much to Angelears for sending me this set, and thank you all for your support. We'll go ahead and kick things off with the box contents. The unboxing experience here is actually really nice. If you haven't seen it, check out my unboxing video as I think it's worth having a look. But inside this box, you get a metal carry case with nice Yukimi etching on it and, the branding. This is essentially the same sort of puck case that you get on the Aful Performer 5, which is also in this price range. But I think this branding is overall much nicer. But inside the case, you will find the cable, which we'll talk about in just a second. And you will find the modular adapter for the cable, which is a 4.4. We'll talk about that in a second as well. And then loose inside the box, you'll find these two plastic cases, which contain the ear tips. If you watch my unboxing, you'll know that the wide-bore ear tips, these are a bit hard to open, the wide-bore ear tips came loose from their packaging and were rolling around inside the box. I really wish that these cases were closed at the side, both for keeping them clean in transit, but also for stopping them from escaping. I will also say that I wish the box for the Yukimi was segmented on the inside instead of just being sort of open. It would help, I think, with the issue with the ear tips escaping. It would make the unboxing experience that little bit more premium. But overall, compared to other IEMs in this price range, things like Zigat and Aful and so on, I feel like this unboxing experience and accessories package feels much more premium overall compared to those brands. So let's take a closer look at that cable. So this is a pretty chunky cable. It honestly feels like it belongs on a set of over-ear headphones rather than an IEM, but this is a 2-wire twist that splits into big individual wires at the Y-split. The wire has a soft touch rubber coating on it, and because of that coating, it doesn't glide through your hands extremely easily, but it also doesn't feel super rubbery and awful in the hands. It's just a little bit grippy by design. As I mentioned earlier, this is a modular cable. It comes with the 3.5 single-ended and the 4.4 millimeter balanced connectors. The modular terminations have CVJ branding on them, and they're using a 5-pin design as opposed to the 4-pin design that I've seen on other modular connectors. When you put the whole thing together, the modular connector is just a tiny bit shorter than what I would say the rival modular connectors on the Zheshien, the S12 Pro, and all the other S12 lookalikes. This is I'd say about that much shorter. I really should have measured it, but it feels shorter when you're using it, which is what matters overall. The Y-split here is a bit plain and lacking in branding, but it's fine. It's a bit subtle. It feels really solid. It's solid metal. The chin slider works pretty decently. It hangs on to that rubberized coating on the wires okay. It does slide around a bit, but I didn't have that many problems when I was using it. There's a couple of problems that I have with this cable out of the box. Number one, if you saw my unboxing video, one of these cables has a crease in it. There it is. Had a crease on it out of the box, just brand new. And when I went to go weigh the IEMs, because I weigh the shells and the cable separately, I went to go pull the connector off, and the stainless steel barrel on the connector came off of the connector. And you can see that the glue either didn't set properly or didn't dry properly, but that didn't feel very premium to me. So I contacted Angelears about this, and I said specifically, if this had happened to any other customer, how would you deal with this? And Angelears basically said, if this had happened to another customer, we would immediately send a replacement cable, and we're going to do the same for you. So they asked me to pay a 1 cent shipping fee on their AliExpress store, and the cable is on the way. It hasn't come in, but I'll do a short addendum video when it does and see if the quality is any better. They did say they were going to look into the cable quality with their supplier. I don't know if they actually will, but like I said, I've bought things from Angelears before, not just their collabs, and their customer service has been generally good, so we'll see how that happens. Time to talk about the build quality. These are full CNC machined aluminum alloy shells with an electroplated white coating on them to help resist scratches and dings. One thing I find interesting is the way that the two halves of this IEM are sort of joined together. With most IEMs, you find the top plate is a separate part, and then the whole bottom is the second piece. But in this one, if you can see here, the seam is actually here, where this bottom sort of funnel piece appears to be separate from the rest of the shell. It's a different thing. I also think it's super interesting how vented these IEMs are. You've got a vent there on the side of the nozzle on that sort of funnel. You've got a vent there on the tip. You've got a row of vents here on the sort of bottom side piece. And yeah, I experienced no driver flex with these because of that. I appreciate the little colored squiggles. This one has a red one, and the other one has a blue one that sort of indicate the left from right. I like visibly being able to identify left from right easily. The nozzles are machined as part of that aforementioned funnel structure. They have these cool-looking black filters recessed in them with that sort of triple, notch design on them that I think looks pretty good. The 2-pin connectors also are recessed right next to the Yukimi branding. I prefer recessed 2-pins. I feel like it makes the connection overall more durable. Overall, I think these feel extremely solid in the hands. Thanks to all the vents, like I said, there's no driver flex. I think so long as you keep them relatively clean, the electroplated coating should be easy to help maintain clean. I think these are overall built very, very well. But let's go ahead and pull up the specs. So these are powered by a single dynamic driver with what CVJ describes as a carbonized crystal membrane, which they claim is sort of above DLC membranes in terms of quality. Despite them being fairly large all aluminum shells, the weight actually isn't as much as you would think by just looking at them. To put their weight into perspective, they're about even in weight with the Moondrop Kato 2, which is, a much smaller IEM, all things told. They do claim that they machined out as much as possible while still maintaining durability to make these light, and I think if that's the case, they've succeeded here. Outside of the weight and the diaphragm material, however, these have fairly typical specifications for single DD IEMs. The nozzles aren't too long, they're not too wide, the impedance and sensitivity aren't anything crazy. You really could drive these with basically any source, even older phones or older audio players, without any issues. But now it's time for the cool wall. The Yukimi seem rather unique to me, in what seems to be a price range of either clean stainless steel shells or, resin with all sorts of sparkles over it. I think that the matte white sort of stands out among the pack, if you will. I don't think there's that many white color options for IEMs at this price range. There are a couple at or under the $100 mark. I know the Meze Alba is a thing. I just feel like this isn't a very common color scheme, at least in the mainstream chi-fi market currently. There is one issue I have with this design, and that is that all of these cool vents and colored squiggles and things, they all completely disappear once it goes in your ear. And from the outside, it sort of looks like a very plain, minimalistic design once it's in the ear. So because of that, I'm going to go ahead and put these in cool. But what will the Council of Ladies think of what I feel is an elegant, classy design? Well, let's find out together. So we're not off to a great start. Only one of our ladies thinks that the Yukimi is even pretty, and the other 4 are split evenly between meh and no. Similar spread on the compliments, with the mehs being converted to no's, so not really going as well as I would have hoped. But, let's look at their comments and see what they have to say. Utilitarian, looks like they'll get dirty easily, and sleek. So I guess they weren't too impressed by these. Maybe the white is just a bit too boring for them. Let's go on to comfort. These shells are contoured and shaped sort of like a semi-custom shell. This means I do have to give my typical spiel about semi-custom shells and how they won't work for every ear, and as always, I recommend you buy from a store with a good return policy in case these don't fit your ears. For me, however, these fit really well. The weight, sort of chonkiness of the cable is going to take a little bit of getting used to, but I found it was fine for nice long listening sessions. This set did pass my wife's tiny ears test, and although the ear hooks did fit her well, she was less able to deal with the weight of the cable and found that she could only wear them for about a max of 2 hours before she needed to take a break from them. Like I said last time, 2 hours is enough to listen to all 4 sides of a 2-disc album. So I'm going to give these a conditional pass, and she agreed. But putting all that to the side, let's get to the most important thing, which is how these sound. As always, we begin with the bass. The low-end performance is not a point of emphasis for this set. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not resolving in this area, just that it's sort of de-emphasized compared to the rest of the tuning. While the sub-bass doesn't really rumble or shake, the lower bass drops in Justice's Genesis still feel like they have some weight behind them. And the texture is definitely there. The bass drops feel nice and tight and controlled. It's good quality bass here. As far as bass guitar and kick drums go, I think that there's a good, decent, slight mid-bass boost to these to keep bass guitar and things like that in the mix. A good example of this is Stan Getz's Samba Triste. The bass in the left ear is there throughout the song, and it doesn't get drowned out. Even though the saxophone is sharing the same space in the left ear, it's still there, and you can hear it, and it's resolved. This set is definitely quality over quantity when it comes to the bass presentation. If you're mostly into bass-heavy music, you might come away slightly disappointed by this set, but I don't feel like this driver is struggling to reach those low notes at all. At least it didn't sound that way to me. It made me a bit curious. I don't typically like to test EQ on this channel, but seeing as it was doing pretty well with the low notes, I threw a 4 dB sub-bass shelf at it and found that, honestly, this driver did it pretty well. Without EQ, though, I feel like this is a subdued yet still very high-quality bass presentation that'll please people who love the sort of softer, more mellow bass and disappoint people who want that punchy, strong bass. Because the mid-bass boost here is rather modest, the mid-range presentation is extremely clean and very clear for a single DD set. I don't find it lean or thin like I do on some Harman tune sets. For example, Jessica by the Allman Brothers Band sounds really great on this set. The guitars, piano, bass, and drums, they have the body to them that I expect, and they're all easily distinguished from one another with pretty good separation, and I feel like no one instrument is drowning out the other. The piano solo in particular shows off the resolution that this set possesses, not just in the mids, but all over the range. As far as vocals go, both male and female vocals are very well presented with no unnatural tonality. Masayuki Suzuki and Airi Suzuki's duet Daddy Daddy Do sounds really nice here. Both vocals are front and center with what I feel is the sort of Goldilocks amount of emphasis. There's just enough extra, forwardness to be special, but not so much that it outright ruins the replay. The upper mids and treble is where this set shines, literally. This set has a bright leaning tilt that comes off to me as very detailed and resolving. In terms of female harmonics, they're quite prominent here, but not in what I would call a overdone or overcooked way, as I like to say. Gloria Estefan's voice has some extra pizzazz in it in her song 123. The little breaths she takes at the end of some words sound, pretty clear on these, and it makes you feel like you're pretty close to her when she's singing. The sustained notes that she hits have a little bit of longer decay than I feel is strictly natural, but as I like to say, people like different things. Not everyone prefers natural. They want a little bit of extra emphasis. And I feel like, honestly, it works pretty well for Gloria Estefan. As you would expect with emphasized vocal harmonics like this, the percussion and instrument harmonics are also more prominent than you might be used to. This is 100% a bright-leaning set. The tonality, however, doesn't come across as piercing or harsh. It can cause what I'm going to refer to from now on as slow fatigue, which is where if you're not careful with the volume, you'll be listening for 20-30 minutes, and then your ears just start to feel a little, for lack of a better word, tired or itchy or bothersome, and it can take a little bit of time to recover after that. One of my tests for sort of piercing harshness is Madonna's Material Girl. The electric triangle is a quick and easy check for very harsh piercing treble. And although it's quite potent here, it didn't make me wince while listening. I didn't recoil when it came out. Even with the synths, the echo effects, and the percussion, I didn't feel like this track was immediately fatiguing. I could listen to the whole thing no problem. I didn't want to turn down the volume. Even at moderate volumes, I didn't experience it. But if you keep that song, on a higher volume for about half an hour or so, your ears are definitely going to be complaining. Overall, I think that the female harmonics for Gloria Estefan and Madonna work great. The treble presentation is highly resolving. It's bright, sparkly, and extremely resolving without being too harsh, at least to my ears. If you are treble sensitive, though, I would stay away from this one. Let's move on to talk about technicalities. I did my typical Steely Dan Black Cow echo test, and while the echo wasn't, say, as energetic as I'm used to, it was still clearly audible in the left ear. And I think that this driver honestly leaves some performance on the table in terms of low-end grunt. At the opposite end of the spectrum, this set absolutely shines in terms of detail retrieval. One of my favorite folk tunes is Freight Train by Elizabeth Cotten. Not only is it about trains, which I love, but it's also an amazing piece of, sort of folk guitar work. She's a left-handed guitarist who learned to play a right-handed guitar upside down, and her unique way of playing the bass notes with her fingers and the melody with the thumb became extremely iconic. Good recordings of this tune are rife with finger slides, fingernails on strings, ringing and muting of strings, and all those other guitar technicalities that I love to listen to on highly detailed sets, and I would describe this as a highly detailed set. It's absolutely fantastic here, replays everything back easily. Whatever driver they put in here, I feel like it's a pretty good one. Let's talk about stereo separation and perceived soundstage. I wanted to hear more guitars on this set, so I threw on Friday Night in San Francisco. Mediterranean Sundance sounded nice and wide. Both artists had plenty of room to show their craft without intruding on each other's space. In terms of perceived 3D soundstage, I feel like this set had the resolution and the tuning to not really hold back the extra detail you get in live tracks like Ahmad Jamal's Ahmad Blues live at the Spotlight Club. Not only are things like the echo and the reverb of the room captured well, but the placement of the piano, bass, and drums in the space is spot on. It sounds like you're sitting right in the middle of the band with the piano to your left, the drum kits to your right. This is a really good set for stereo separation and soundstage, at least to my ears with those well-mastered tracks. In terms of overall tonality, the Yukimi comes across to me as a straight-up bright set. I don't feel like there's enough of a bass boost to really call this a V-shaped set. And before I get into the comparisons, I just want to say I only have one other single DD set in this price range. I have heard samples of other DD sets in this price range, like the EA1000 for Mott, for example. I just don't have them with me. I don't own them, and I can't use them for comparison listening. So please keep that in mind as I move forward with my comparisons. I'll change the way I talk about a set that I don't have versus one that I do have, and my comparisons will be less helpful as a result. But for now, let's go ahead and jump into the first comparison. I also want to make a quick note. While I typically line up my graphs according to equal loudness for my videos, as I think it represents what I hear during volume match comparison better, I've decided to line up all of today's sets at 500 Hz, as I feel it better illustrates the differences in bass and treble, since the mid-range on these is all very, very similar. So we'll go ahead and get started with the Simgot EA500LM, priced at $90. I did my comparison listening with the gold nozzles fitted to the LM, as I felt that, they're my preferred tuning on this set. And they match the Yukimi a little bit better in tuning than the silver ones. In terms of tuning, the LM is your typical sort of Simgot house sound with its brighter leaning V-shaped tuning. Overall, I think that these two sound very similar until you get to the bass. The LM has more punch, more rumble. It just feels like an overall more satisfying low end to me than on the Yukimi, and as a result, the Yukimi comes across as airier, brighter, and that little bit more sparkly than the LM. The overall energy is similar, but I think that the de-emphasized bass presentation is responsible for the way I hear it. In technical, guitar-heavy tracks, I ended up preferring the Yukimi every time, but with basically any other more sort of low-end focused genre, I went with the LM. I did feel like the Yukimi was the wider sounding set, with slightly better imaging, but that's based on my usual live recording tests, so take that with a grain of salt. Neither of these is for treble-sensitive folks. And while I don't find either set piercing or shrill, they're both capable of that slow stealth fatigue that I talked about earlier, especially if you're not careful with your volume. Overall, I feel like they're sort of going for different tunings. In terms of packaging, cable, everything else, the Yukimi definitely feels and sounds like the more premium option. It's more technical, more analytical, more just crisp. The EA500LM, however, is smoother, warmer, a little bit more relaxing, at least compared to the Yukimi. And while the Yukimi is the more premium feeling and sounding, it's also twice the cost, so keep that in mind. Speaking of twice the cost of the 500LM, let's bring the Moondrop Kato in, priced at $180. And yes, I say it Kato because the lady on the box is inspired by Kato, not Kato, who is the butler for Inspector Clouseau in the Pink Panther movies. But comparing the Kato to the Yukimi, the Moondrop VSDF tuning, at least to my ears, is kind of what I feel a lot of people say the meta tuning is. It's an all-around tuning that does everything well, but can be considered sort of boring by people. Against the Yukimi, this comes across more balanced, more neutral, a bit warmer, much more relaxing to listen to. The Yukimi, again, is going to come off more analytical, sparkly, more revealing of the two. The Kato, I feel, matches it in terms of overall resolution and resolving power. This is the third iteration of the driver that was in the Canas. It just got the fourth iteration in the Cadence, and Moondrop has a lot of experience tuning this driver. In terms of unboxing and accessories, I feel like the Kato edges out the Yukimi. It's got a better case, it's got more premium ear tips using spring tips instead of the regular tips that Yukimi has, and the box is compartmentalized, so it does a better job of keeping things in place during shipping, and it feels a bit more premium compared to the open design of the box on the Yukimi. At this price range, the $30 price difference between these two isn't really that big of a gap. I feel like these two sets trade blows in listening. Again, I prefer the Yukimi for technical, tracks, guitar, classical, bluegrass. But the Kato is the one that I would pick if, for example, I was going to be on a long-distance flight. Overall, I like both, but for different reasons. So now we get to the part of the video that I'm going to call Amigo Assumptions, because quite honestly, I'm going to have basically no idea what I'm talking about, and I'm telling you this straight up because you as the viewer need to know that I do not have the sets I'm going to talk about. I was not able to comparison listen to them, and I'm going to bring up 3 sets here. I have heard 2 of them, maybe 1 or 2 times for a few minutes at a time before, certainly not long enough to get a meaningful opinion, but here we go. Also, these are not my graphs, so any inferences I'll be making here might be completely wrong due to manufacturer variance. So with that out of the way, I'd like to extend a quick thank you to Timmy from Giz Audio for making use of his graphs, and let's get going. First, I'll pull up my graph with the Yukimi, the Kato, and the LM. This is from my Squig. All I want you to note here is that the Yukimi has about 3.5 decibels less energy at 30 Hz compared to the Kato. And we can see the relative distance between the Kato and the 500LM in a similar way. So now, let's pull up Timmy's graphs. I have the Kato and the 500LM pulled up here, and right away you can see that Timmy's LM appears to have more energy in the bass compared to the Kato at 30 Hz than my graph represents. Yet another reason why you shouldn't compare squig links across couplers and reviewers. But the point I want to make here isn't about the overall volume level, it's about the general tuning tendencies of the $200-ish single DD sets. The Fermat and the LM are the bassiest of the bunch. They also have the most treble energy, at least according to the graphs. The Origin and the Kato, on the other hand, are more balanced out with less energy in both categories. And now here's my point. If I were to mail my Yukimi to Timmy and he graphed it, I expect it would have treble energy about in line with the Fermat and a bit less bass than the Origin. And what this whole exercise has been about is me basically saying that the Yukimi has unique tuning when compared to its peers in the $200-ish price range. Compared to the 500LM, I think it's an upgrade in terms of overall resolution and included accessories, but it's twice the price. You'll have to decide if that's worth it for you. It trades blows well with the Kato, but I would say that, like with the 500LM, they're really going for different tunings. And I think that that can honestly be said of the Yukimi compared with the whole rest of the premium single DD sets in this price range. It's going for something different compared to the Origin, to the Fermat, even to the Olina SE. And yeah, I think none of those other sets will hit this level of brightness or have that clean, revealing tonality just because they'll have more bass to balance it out. And if that's what you're looking for, then this is probably the one you're going to want. But enough talking about sets I don't own and have only tried once or twice. Let's see how the Yukimi fares on my Audio Amigo Arbitrary rating scale. Let me start by talking a bit about what I've been calling the premium DD price bracket. I've only heard two, but in my opinion, in terms of overall detail retrieval and resolution, both sets lag a bit behind both full-range planars, such as the S12 Pro or Anniversary Edition, and they also fall a bit behind, I think, well-crossed-over hybrids such as the Performer 5. So why would people buy these if they're, in my opinion, not as resolving? It's simple. They prefer the tonality and timbre of a single DD set over a planar or a hybrid. They don't like how balanced armatures sound in the treble. They don't like how planars sound in the treble or that fastness that planars can have in the bass. Now, there are sets such as the 500LM and the Olina that specifically take high dollar drivers from these sets and bring them down to the $100-ish price level. So why would you spend twice as much? My answer to that question is, a bunch of little things. Build quality, shell design, including accessories, quality control, and sometimes, driver quality. Are the Fermat, Kato, and Origin better than the LM, the Aria, and the Olina? I only have experience with one of those pairs, the Kato and the Aria, but to me the answer is yes. I do prefer the Kato over the Aria. Is the Kato worth twice the price of the Aria? With my sensible pants on, no way. The Aria is a way better value. But the Kato looks nicer, and it comes with more stuff, and the cable is better. It's got the better waifu on the box. And if I want something that sounds better, but I can't deal with, BA timbre or PZT graininess or planar timbre, then these sets are for those people. People who want to drop a little more cash on an upgrade, but really, really prefer the tonality of a single DD. Now, with the Yukimi is where things get a bit interesting. It doesn't really have a sub $100 single DD equivalent. It might. I haven't tried the CVJ Aria, but the only graph I could find for it makes it look much more neutral than bright. So overall, this is a unique tuning, especially at this price point. I don't think it's a bad tuning. For female vocals and technical, acoustic, sort of classical guitar music, it absolutely shines. It comes in a nice box, it's got a nice cable, it's got good looking shells, the cable's even modular. I think if you add all of that together, I think it ends up in my but I like this tier. It might not be my first choice for every genre, and the value proposition might not be the strongest, but if you're one of those people that just really loves a fantastic, bright treble presentation and you don't want bass that gets in the way, I think this can be a very compelling option. Honestly, the fact that I didn't find it fatiguing all that much personally is what kept it out of the good tier. If it had been piercing or harsh right off the bat, it would have definitely been in good, but I think it's kind of hard to find a set with this much treble emphasis that doesn't fatigue immediately. But again, word of caution, if you're even slightly treble sensitive, please think twice before ordering this set. So, only one question left to answer now. Do I recommend the Yukimi? Yes, but it's a very specific recommendation, and one that suits its status as a specialty set. First, who isn't this for? This is a new thing I'm going to shamelessly steal from Critical and his Hangout videos because I think it works well for specialist sets like this. This isn't for you if you like a strong bass response. It isn't for you if you want the absolute best value in terms of resolving power per dollar spent. And this isn't for you if you don't like white as a color and think it's going to get dirty. But if you know you prefer that single DD tonality, if what you want is a detailed, crisp, clinical, resolving, revealing treble presentation that is wrapped up in, what is essentially a really nice looking shell and is the brightest single DD set in the $100, $250 price bracket, then, as far as I'm concerned, your search is over. This set is what you're looking for. But that's going to do it for this one. I told you I had a bunch of bright sets lined up on my docket. Looking at my schedule, it looks like I'll only have one more full review like this before I get back from CanJam Dallas, and I might have to film that on my vacation, so keep an eye out for that one. But I'll have some other shorter videos to keep you company, a couple of unboxings for some sets that I'll review when I get back. I have an addendum video planned and a new video style that I'm going to try out, so look out for that. Also, expect some buyer's guides coming up in the weeks leading to 11/11. The response to my Letshuoer buyer's guide was really positive, so I'd like to do a couple more of those videos for you guys. But, that's what I'm working on. That's going to do it for me for today. I appreciate your continued support. Thank you all so much for watching. This has been Omar with Audio Amigo Reviews, and I will catch you all next time.